Hi, my name is Laura Coutts, and I'm an assistant director at the Duke University Career Center. Today, we're going to talk about how to successfully negotiate a job offer. It's a topic that might be scary for some people, but let's break it down into smaller pieces. Our goals for today are showing some light on the negotiation process. First, we're going to look at some statistics and facts about negotiating. We'll discuss how to figure out what an average salary should be based on your skills, experience, education, and location of the position. We'll talk about what kind of things you can negotiate. Your compensation package is more than just what your salary is. And we're going to talk about how and when you should be negotiating. Finally, I'm going to provide some helpful phrases that can be helpful in the negotiation process. And a reminder that, this process can be really nerve-wracking, especially if it's the first time you've been doing it. But negotiating is kind of like a muscle. Much like that, if you work it out, or in the case of negotiating, it's practice out loud, it should become easier over time. So a little bit about the facts of negotiating. There's a lot of factors that influence pay, including your industry, what title you have, the responsibilities that you might have in that role. However, those aren't the only factors that can influence pay. Studies have also shown that there's a pay gap along racial and gender lines. Some of the reasons may be stereotype, bias, discrimination, also unspoken expectations like those of parents or a primary income earner. So what does this actually look like in action? Surveys have shown that men will typically apply to a job if they meet 60% of the criteria, while women will apply if they meet 100% of the criteria. At the same time, men will negotiate their salary more than 50% of the time, while women will negotiate less than 10% of the time. So this shows us men are applying to jobs that women are self-selecting out of. So not only do they have a higher likelihood of actually landing that job because they've applied to it, they also have a higher chance of more pay if they're willing to negotiate. So why does this matter? Why does negotiating matter at all? If person A accepts their first salary at $50,000, this is just an example, and let's say the person next to them negotiates for an extra $5,000 that year. If all of your raises are based on previous years, it means that your raises can be incrementally larger every year. So the tiny difference can really affect long-term salary options. Compounding over the lifetime, how much money is that $5,000 difference? It is $1 million over a career. So that one $5,000 negotiation can compound into the full length of your career, just keeping in mind. We've talked about some of the facts. Now let's talk about how to identify your value. Articulating your value can help you prove and reinforce why you're worth a fair and equitable salary or raise. Phrases that focus on your value can help you be more persuasive during negotiation. So take a moment here to pause the video and jot down some of the accomplishments, skills, experiences that would be valuable to an employer. So what do you already know that they don't have to teach you? How are you making their job easier in training? So considering what you bring to the table, that's going to help inform your value statements that you can create. Again, pause, take a moment in the video, jot down some of your accomplishments, education skills, expertise that you can think of that would be valuable to an employer. So next, we're going to write a few value statements so that you can have them ready. Part of identifying your value is also being able to communicate that to an employer. For an example, I pulled off organizing a networking event for 75 students using my delegation and communication skills. It was so popular that we saw our membership increase by 50% in the next month. Right? So that example, I'm talking about an accomplishment, which is organizing an event, using the action verb, which is organizing. And I also talked about my skills that were delegation and communication. I also provided a result, right? So it wasn't just that I had skills, it wasn't just that I did a thing, but there was an actual impact to the work that I did. Here's another example of a value statement that you can create. Based on my research experience and writing skills, I'm excited to contribute my talents to your organization. So part of that is showing these are the specific skills that I'm bringing that will be useful to you as an employer. So what value are you bringing to them? Again, pause and write down a few of these value statements for yourself. Hopefully you've taken a minute to write down some of those value statements to start articulating what characteristics you would bring to an employer. What you're going to do first is practice saying one of those statements out loud. How did that feel? Is that uncomfortable? Do you feel confident? A quick tip is, if you are stuck, seek input from a few people who know you well. Another thing that I find really helpful is to put yourself in the voice of your best friend. How would they speak confidently about your value? And can you put that voice into your own body and be able to speak that way confidently about your value? Before we get into salary specifics, you're going to want to take some time to think critically about how your skills and accomplishments match the position or promotion opportunity. So it's really about connecting your experience skills to that of what the role would be that you are filling. Also, continue to practice saying these value statements out loud with friends, family, mentors, career counselors. So people you feel comfortable with at first, you can speak a little bit about what value you've provided to groups you've worked with previously, and that will make you a little bit more comfortable. You're working out that muscle. Moving on to salary knowledge, right? So this is figuring out how much am I worth? I've been able to talk a little bit about my skills, but what do the numbers look like? So in addition to speaking about the qualifications, you have to know what the norms are in that industry and that location. A crucial part of confident negotiation is going to be based on the research that you do. There are a few times that the salary question might come up. That could be in the written application. They're asking for a range. It could come when you're in an interview, the first phone screening. It could be a virtual interview. It could be a site visit. Any of these are opportunities potentially for an employer to ask you what you think you're worth. It can also happen not until the job offer, right? And so it's helpful to know that this question might come up as you're applying. So it's helpful to do research before you apply to these roles. You should know what an average is for that type of company, for that type of organization, and that area that you would be living in. So here's some steps to understand what salary you can expect. Researching the job market so that you are well informed. Conduct a rough budget so you know how much you actually need. Do Personal Finance has a good tool for a budget. Remember that salaries are really different in different geographic locations. There are several cost of living calculators that you can check. CNN has one, salary.com, NerdWallet, Bankrate. I spoke with a student who was looking at a job for $75,000 in Austin, Texas, or $85,000 in New York City. It seemed like the $85,000 was more, but the cost of living to equate the 75 grand you're making in Austin would be about $115,000 in New York City, based on the cost of living in that area. Another tip is you might want to use related job titles while you're researching. So if you're thinking about doing all this research on salary.com or the other resources that I have on this next slide, think about a similar title that might be helpful for you to see what else is normal in the industry or in the geographic location. So here are some of the resources. There are some that are online. Again, take them with a grain of salt. One data point is not necessarily a trend, but being able to compare them across several different sites or several different people is really helpful. Salary.com, PayScale, Glassdoor, those are all usually employee reported. Bureau of Labor Statistics has averages across the country. LinkedIn Salary is another tool. There are some industries that have salary surveys. The American Association of University Professors, the AAUP, has an annual compensation survey. That's something that you can look into. There's postdoc guidelines from the National Institutes of Health. And then there's also any government salary is able to be Googled online. So you can go and look at state employees, whether they're at a university, a city government, any of those government roles are preset and you should be able to search for them. There's also potentially internal salary information. So you might be told, oh, it's a range 6 pay for a job. What does that mean? They might not tell people outside of that organization, but if you know folks, they can say, oh, that's in the range of this to this. Professional associations sometimes have this information, and this is a really helpful one, is the people who are currently doing those jobs know best what average salaries are. And instead of asking someone, how much money do you make? An easy way to ask that would be, do you know a salary range for a recent graduate at your organization? Right? Based on my education level, what would I expect to get at an organization like yours? Or I've been doing some research. I'm interested to know what the salary range you've seen for data scientists in this field. That's another way of just saying, I'm interested, I'm taking information in, I am sorting this. But it's important to think about doing this research with more than one source. It's looking at a few different places for what the norms are. Next thing we want to talk about is the strategy. So I want to introduce an idea called integrative bargaining. It's also called interest-based bargaining. So instead of assuming that things need to be split down the middle, it really is an attempt to understand the other person's needs. So a classic example is an orange. So if there's only one orange in the refrigerator and two people want it at once, the standard distributive bargaining, the opposite of integrative, distributive bargaining means you would just distribute it to two people equally, cut it right in half. But this integrative bargaining approach, where you're kind of understanding the other person's needs, would be a conversation. And if you realize one person wants the zest to bake and the other one would like to eat the orange, well, then both people could be really happy because you've had that conversation, understood what everyone's needs are. So what does this look like in practicality? There are several different things that are negotiable, right? And in a lot of positions, there are these on the left-hand side. Are they sick days? Are they expense accounts, right? Some jobs have them, some jobs do not. But these are all things to think about. If your base salary is not negotiable, which is sometimes the case with some organizations, is there any way to get additional sick days? Are there other things like professional memberships that they will cover the cost of? Think about these additional benefits that are most important to you. Especially things, vacation days. If you have family that lives in, let's say, Thailand, right? You want to travel and visit them. Is it possible for you to get at least 2 weeks off at a time, right? Takes a while to get there. And so really thinking about what matters most to you and determine if your employer is flexible about that. It's all about asking questions in a really inquisitive way. And just one more tip, that these one-time expenses are usually easier for employers to tie into an offer. So a $2,000 moving expense would be a one-time cost for them. If they increase your salary $2,000, well, that means that they probably future raises would be increased by more than it would be previously. So really thinking about, are there ways that you can increase that need, especially if you're paying for first month's rent or traveling or moving is expensive. So are there ways that you can have your employer help you with those things? Let's just recap some of what you've learned about negotiation so far. It does not matter how much you currently make or how much you made in your last job. You deserve a fair and equitable salary that is commensurate with your skills and experience. It's important to think through the elements of a typical compensation package before you negotiate, right? You've done research on what things are, what average salaries are. You've also done research on what different options are and what is most important to you when you're negotiating. When you think about this strategy and how you're approaching the conversation, think about how you would advocate for a friend. That tone of voice might be able to help you with the confidence in the value statements. And finally, you should know that many employers actually expect you to negotiate. So they, a lot of the times, will provide an offer to you that actually has some wiggle room in it. And it's worth asking if there is a possibility of increase in pay or any of these other benefits. So please know, a lot of employers will expect you to negotiate. And as long as you're not approaching it as I need this, you need that, and this collaborative kind of understanding each other way, that can be a really helpful way of thinking about this negotiation. You're going to want to remind them, again, this is strategy, a recap. Remind them of your value by using those value statements. Remain positive and flexible. This is problem solving, not a you versus me. Avoid getting too personal or oversharing, right? Making sure that you're just saying, these are the things that matter most to me. Doesn't have to be overly intimate. A big thing that's sometimes hard is try to get them to offer a number or a range first. So I'll show you some phrases that might be helpful for this, but it's really helpful to kind of deflect any of these conversations until after you have an offer. And this is really going to be when you have the most leverage. Let me explain that a little bit more. This is a very unscientific chart that I've made, but before you think about this negotiation process, thinking about how much power you have or leverage you have in being able to have this conversation. When you apply, there's not too much leverage, right? They haven't chosen you yet. Phone interview, even on-sites, not too much room to negotiate at those points. But once you have the offer, once they've gone through the interview, the application process with you, and they say, we want you, that is the moment where you have power in the role. And so you're not forcing them into a back and forth negotiation process, but it's an ability to start that problem solving. So both you and the employer will be happy with your final compensation package. Again, it's not a great place to negotiating on the first day is not usually where you do that. It's between the offer and the acceptance is really where you have the most power in salary negotiation. I'm going to review a few negotiation phrases to practice. And these are before an offer has been made. Feel free to pause the video and read some of these phrases out loud. Again, I want to reiterate at the bottom, if an employer keeps pressing you to offer a target, say something like a range around the mid X's, right? But that will require that you have done research in order to offer a salary range. So you need to think about that before you get into that situation. Here's some negotiation phrases to practice after an offer has been made. One note about this first one, thanks so much. I'm really excited about this. Can you please give me a few days to think it through? This is important. Give yourself some time to review everything you have. The first rush of an offer can be really overwhelming and exciting, and you might forget some of those things that you've identified that are really important to you. So give yourself some time to think about it, even if you know you're going to take the job. Ask for 24 hours and make sure they know when and how you're going to reach back out to them. Here's some other helpful phrases that you can pause and practice saying out loud. Here's some other phrases that you can use after the offers got made. And this is really just explaining where you're coming from, right? Let's collaborate together. This is problem solving. It's helpful to lead with questions. So ask for more details. Quotes I've received, moving costs will be around $5,000. Does the company normally cover that expense for new employees? It's really important to just asking about what's feasible. So what details are usually put into writing, which are a verbal agreement. Try to get things in writing, but you might not be able to. The writing just confirms that that's a thing that's about to happen. Finally, a few phrases that can be helpful when you're reviewing the offer. When is the deadline to decide, right? You're really trying not to ask for more than one extension. The only exception to that would be if you're having multiple offers and you communicate with everyone during the process. So if you have a second, interview coming up, you've gotten the offer for the first one, you can ask if they are flexible, can you have 2 more weeks? And then go back to the first organization that you're still interviewing with and say, I have another offer on the table. Is it possible to kind of accelerate this process? It may or may not be. But once you have decided, it's important to ask who you can contact with questions. Is it human resources, the hiring manager, both? It might be a back and forth between several methods, but it's really helpful sometimes to get this on phone so that you can have a list of all of the questions you want to ask. It can be 15 questions, right? What's the average compensation package for vision insurance, right? So what do these things look like? I have lots of questions. That is very normal. And so sometimes on phone, it's easier to do some back and forth rather than email. In the end, you're going to want everything written down via email, but the back and forth is sometimes a little bit easier via phone. A few final tips: always negotiate. And this might just be asking questions, asking what the norms are. But keep in mind that promotion might be tied to your first salary at an organization. So that $5,000 difference we saw at the beginning, that can turn into a large impact long-term. Get the final offer in writing. This is important. So everyone agrees to something. We all have on piece of paper agreement, and this email counts as getting it in writing. Try not to keep coming back with more negotiation points. Again, you can ask all those questions up front once you've gotten the offer, right? This, what are these things that are negotiable? And this is really important. Once you have an accepted offer, stop searching for jobs. You should contact employers you've applied to. You should withdraw those applications and turn down further invitations to interview. This is very important. Once you've accepted a position, stop looking elsewhere. You don't want to have to go back on the employer and say, actually, I don't want to take this position. I'm going somewhere else. They won't be happy. It's not a good look, right? And so make sure that you're confident in your acceptance. Ask for an extension if you need it, but try to make this decision one time while you're doing the job search or internship search. A few next steps for you to think about. Reviewing the Career Center's guides on interviewing and negotiating. Those are available on the Duke Career Center's website. Research salary ranges in your field or fields of interest. Are there differences between public-private type of organizations? As a startup versus an established large company have different. And also research the cost of living in different locations. This is really important to know this knowledge. Practice saying your value statements and phrases out loud. You can record yourself on your voice memo, on whatever video platform you have. Practice with people that you know and are comfortable with. Practice saying those value statements will help make them a little bit easier. Finally, if you have any questions or would like to make an appointment with someone from the Duke Career Center, you can do that through Career Connections or email me here. Thanks so much for coming.